Welcome to LOA Today. Walt and life coach Joel Elston here. Today is Thursday, January 18, 2018. 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy for the day, and I'm glad to welcome Joel back. I mean, we only get to do it once a week, you and I, but that's kind of par for the course. We were doing it once a week for a couple of years there.
Yeah, and my perspective hasn't changed a bit. So, but it's so glad to have the other coaches and other co-hosts on board. It's such a great team. You really give me great credit for putting together such an amazing group of people that are able to. Our ultimate goal for years have been able to deliver the content we're delivering now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was just kind of reminiscing with, I think it was with Wendy the other day, about how, for quite a long time there, you and I talked about, wouldn't it be great if we could do a drive time show, and do like a daily drive time show and so forth and get it on radio. Well, we're not on radio yet, but we've got 2 drive times during the day, so we got part of the goal achieved already. That alone makes me smile, because we talked about that for how long now? I don't know how long it was.
Yeah, well, I mean, we first started out, I love the concept so much, and I still think that idea of being on a radio, and I get what we're on now, but even as we expand further into, somebody to literally be able to sit in their car and listen to the positive stuff, the law of attraction, how to apply it in your day, and go right into work with that attitude. It's just such an amazing potential of what it could do for people, instead of listening to, I don't want to be negative, but instead of listening to stuff that maybe isn't so positive during the day, or stuff, the concepts of the amazing, what we bring to the table is life altering versus just some mindless programming that someone else has come up with.
Mindless meaning negative. Let's be perfectly blunt about it. But you're right. We don't want to go negative, so we'll stay away from that. But today's topic actually relates to that, because our topic is, are you really happy? And it's an interesting topic, actually not, are you really happy? Are you emotionally happy? Are you emotionally stable, or are you emotionally happy, and what's the difference? And it's a topic that came up from conversations I've seen on social media about the law of attraction. I saw one post today, in fact, that basically stressed the importance of, when you're trying to attract a new partner, make sure that the partner is emotionally stable. And as soon as I saw that, I said, no, that's not quite right. Because, I mean, you can be depressed all the time and be stable. That's not a good thing. There's nothing good about that. But emotionally happy or emotionally healthy, that's a different animal entirely. So, I think maybe this is a case of people needing to kind of raise their sights a little bit. But if you aim for somebody who's emotionally healthy or who is emotionally happy, I think you got a much better chance, don't you?
Oh, I really believe, yes, absolutely. To answer your question, I think that so many of us get stuck on where everyone else is. And I think the topic itself of let's start with us.
Yes.
When I am emotionally healthy and happy, then my attraction will be to a similar. I think a lot of people get stuck. It's very hard, it's not impossible, to attract emotionally healthy when you're a mental train wreck yourself. That just, if we're honest. So as with everything else, the first law of human happiness, I believe, starts with self-responsibility. Everything is self-responsibility. I take care of me first, and I don't mean that in a selfish way. I need to get healthy for me. And then all I will be able to attract is a similar person who is that healthy. If I am way out there, then that's what I'm going to tend to attract. So it does start with us. Are you emotionally healthy? Is that question. And if you are, and you're trying to attract, you don't need to start defining to the universe what to attract. It's going to attract what you are putting out there. Emotionally healthy people attract emotionally healthy people. And I've always been amazed at one of the classic matchups, and sort of a psychological, I've always been amazed at the number of narcissistic people that end up with borderline personality disordered people. It's like those energies just sort of attract, because both fulfill a need.
Right.
And the same thing with the emotionally healthy side. When you're emotionally healthy, you're fulfilling that emptiness that would have been there with an emotionally healthy person. But it's almost like you can't be empty and be emotionally healthy at the same time. Happiness starts internally. And then once you're happy internally, you would be able to, happiness is the beginning of the emotional healthy point. And that sounds like it's double speak, but it really begins with us. At the end of the day, it begins with us. We're in charge of our own happiness. No one dictates it to us. You know, I often do a form of this on a Facebook post, but, you know, here's a complete step-by-step method of being happy. Step one, be happy.
Yeah, right.
And then that concludes our steps for the day.
That's
It's
right.
just do it. It's almost the same thing with the emotionally healthy pieces. What are you looking to fulfill? Anything that is required, if you believe another human being can make you whole, or a new car can make you better, or this can make anything better, then you're not emotionally healthy. You're looking to fill that void from the outside. When you fill voids from the inside, and I love a nice car. I love a nice house. I love having a lot of money, but they don't make me who I am. I was there first before I had the Porsche, if that makes any sense.
It does. And by the way, you used two terms that somebody not in psychotherapeutic circles may not totally understand what they mean. So just take a moment to define what a borderline personality is and what narcissism is.
Okay. In layman's terms, let's start with a narcissistic personality. A narcissistic personality disorder is when someone has that everything is simply about them. We may know politicians that no matter what, everything is focused on them. A lot of politicians and actors are narcissistic. They're selfish in their endeavors. They no matter what happens, it's about them. An example would be, North Korea blew up Hawaii, but I negotiated really well before that. The focus wouldn't be on what's happening. It would be focused on how that person was affected by and I'm not talking about anybody in particular, of course.
Right. Of course not.
But that idea for us of where we go forward, what happens for us is understanding narcissistic personality is about me. Now, a borderline personality is in a similar to narcissistic, but borderline starts with a fear of abandonment. Everybody you encounter, a borderline encounters, they are fearful they're going to be alone, and they will spend their life with, I'm worried about you abandoning me. No matter who they are, it could be your hairdresser, it could be whoever. And in a borderline personalities world, either you're the greatest person on the planet or you're the most evil person on the planet. In a borderline personality disorder's life, you're either or. There's always, you don't operate in the middle with people.
And once again, we're not talking about a particular person.
Beg your pardon?
Once again, we're not talking about a particular person.
Absolutely. I'm just talking in general. I actually have, at one of my previous employers, I worked with a person who was borderline personality disorder, and one of the things that this person gave me was my birthday card. At my birthday, which is in February, gave me a card that said, "It's such a great situation to be in, to work with a real life superhero." That's the term this person used.
Wow. 2
months later, this person created a false narrative in an attempt to get me fired or thrown out from the company.
Yes.
And that's how borderline personalities operate. So you can see where the narcissistic personality disorder could really be just attractive to that, oh wow, that both sides feed off of each other, but it always ends up in disaster.
Yes.
And you see that. So emotionally unhealthy people tend to attract emotionally unhealthy people, and emotionally healthy people attract emotionally healthy situations. And that's a hard place to understand. But when you start working internally and realize there is no outside fix for emotional happiness or healthy emotional internal thought, you're in charge of that. And that starts with, and the law of attraction fits that. The law of attraction is about personal responsibility. It's about, I want to understand that I am in charge of my happiness. I dictate my reality. And once I come from that place, I'm all powerful on my perspective. And living with my perspective gives me that opportunity to say, I get to dictate then I'm in charge of who comes into my life, because that's what I'm putting out there.
So when someone posts that they're looking for somebody who's emotionally stable, and that we should be looking for someone who's emotionally stable, among other things, they're declaring that their own emotionality is stable. But the question is, stable in what part of the range? Is it positive? Is it negative? Where is it?
Exactly. And again, that term emotionally stable is an internal belief. I know people that are very happy, and what they're emotionally stable within their perspective of what that means to them. They're very happy with that mindset. I know people that would appear to be very dysfunctional from a distance, but to them it's very normal. They're very happy within that. So their version of emotionally stable would not necessarily meet my definition of emotionally stable.
Yes.
I know people that live in total chaos that have become they're very comfortable within their chaos, and so they view that, and that's what they tend to attract. But you are in charge of what you view that as. So when you set up, I had this conversation yesterday with a person who's trying to attract a relationship, and the stipulations that this person is trying to put in, he said it's not working. I said, well, it's not working because of the 50 qualifiers you have or disqualifiers you have lined up. You're making it impossible to attract. Start with attracting like energy, putting out what you want to attract. That's what the law of attraction puts on healthy thought. Healthy thought is about, here's a great example of healthy thought. I want you, Walt, not just because you're somebody I care about, even if I don't know, I want you to be wildly successful. I really do. I mean that.
Thank you.
I don't need to defeat you. I want you to be successful, even if it means you moving above where I'm at or being above where I'm at. I want you to be successful. An emotionally healthy relationship isn't needing to be dependent on the other person. The intent is to both of you lift each other up.
Yes, that's exactly
important stuff.
Oh, very important and critically important, because you can't lift the other person up unless you can lift yourself up.
Right.
There's no way to do it.
I can't make anybody not be depressed. I can talk with them, and one of the most effective ways that I have dealt with people who are dealing with depression or anxiety or any of those type things is I can get there and let them feel my vibration, and then they can get excited, and I can temporarily lift them up during our session. But 15 minutes after my session, they're feeling like they were like nothing's changed. Well, all that changed during their session was their feeling at that time.
Right.
They're in charge of keeping that feeling up.
Yes.
The idea when I wake up every morning, true story, and I've talked to you about this for years, without exception, regardless of how bad my mornings start, and I've had some bad starts to mornings, as you know.
Sure, we all have.
I write 5 things I'm grateful for the last 23 years, every morning. It's written. I start off with gratitude. I focus on the abundance in my life. I focus on what I have. That's how I start the day. I'm excited about going to work. I get to go to work. Those are terms I use. There's never a morning where I wake up and say I have to go to work, because the moment I have to go to work, then I realize I need to stop. Here's an example of keeping yourself emotionally healthy. As you know, a few months ago, I did an experiment. I went to work for this company, a fine company that did quality work and addiction work, and they asked me to be CEO of their company,
right.
Or COO. I'm sorry. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds really good. I love what you're doing, and I'll be able to work with more people and be able to do that. Well, what I found out, Walt, as I told you, was it was more of a managerial role, and I wasn't able to work directly with the clients, which I love. So what happened to me at that point was I had to say, one morning, all it took was one morning is, God, I got to go to work today.
Yeah.
And the moment I said that, I went in and said, guys, I apologize. You need someone else for this job. I still have a great relationship. I refer to them. They refer to me. We have a wonderful, wonderful situation. However, I had to learn, and very important, I had to learn that the moment I felt I had to go there is when I needed to leave there.
Yeah, that's a good indicator.
I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and it's an indicator that we often will tend to ignore, won't we? So many people stay in jobs they don't really love, that they feel like they have to stay there, so they just keep staying there. They never actually shift their thought process around, and then they wonder why they're stuck in a dead-end job. Not realizing that you have to change your thought process if you want to get out of a dead-end job and get into something that you enjoy doing.
Yes. That's that way in life. If a relationship doesn't have communication, if a relationship is very unbalanced in either direction, if a relationship isn't where you're getting an equal amount what you're putting into it, then that's emotionally unhealthy. That doesn't mean that when somebody's having a difficult time in a relationship, you should leave. But I'm talking about over the long haul, if it's always in balance, that's not a healthy relationship. Or if you're the codependent mindset, where codependency, by the way, is a real simple concept of you aren't capable of your own emotions. Someone else's emotions are more important to you, and your emotion is based on them. I see that a lot when, especially like you get young people dealing with addiction and their mothers who are under the mistaken impression they could do recovery for their kids, and they are emotionally attached to their child's success or failure.
Right.
And their mood is built. When I wake up, if I were to wake up and say, I need today to be built up, and my son Justin, who's an amazing young man that I've recently adopted, he does great things, but my mood is not based on his mood. That would not be healthy. My mood is not based on his successes. I'm very proud of what he's doing, and when he has successes that I'm happy for him, and when he has failures, I'm not the failure either. That's what happens when you get stuck in somebody else's world. Yes, when they're doing great, you feel great, but you feel really horrible with it. My mood is not dependent on another person. Codependency is what that is. So you see that a lot in emotionally unhealthy people. They're relying on someone else's situation to make them feel.
That's right. To feel anything, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I often will, when I ask somebody to explain a situation, I say, can you tell me what's going on? And I often will put this qualifier in there when I sense we're dealing with a codependent situation. I will say, without using another person as an example or including them in your explanation, tell me what's going on with you.
Oh, Joel, that's not fair.
Oh, my goodness. The moment you put that in front of them, you're like, well, they just are frozen.
How do you respond when you're not used to responding that way?
Right. And because 90% of the dialogue of a lot of these people is based on, if my son would do this, I would be happy. If my husband would do this, I would be happy. If your happiness is followed by somebody else's performance or lack of performance or whatever, if they would quit doing this, I'd be happy. If they do this, I'd be happy. Then you're doing happiness wrong. That's the emotional healthy. We need to develop emotional healthy scale. It's not that hard to do. But ask the question, what is your version of happiness? And is it reliant on another person? And if it is, you're not emotionally healthy because you haven't developed your own emotional health. And that doesn't mean, you always have to explain things to people. It doesn't mean when our kids go through stuff, we don't feel that. Obviously, that's the case. No one wants to see our kids suffer or go through stuff, but your happiness can't be dependent upon that, or you're destined to spend the rest of your life with the ups and down swings of that. And it's not healthy for them either, because they have to learn to regulate their own emotion. I tell Justin, and often, he is in charge of his happiness. I am in charge of my happiness. Everybody is. It's not always politically correct in this environment we are today, but I think our society has unintentionally, and all with good meaning, by the way, Walt, but we've taken we've turned trauma into this way of excusing everything. Trauma is an explanation. It's not an excuse. We've turned it into an excuse not to perform. Trauma happens. Our response to it is the answer. And most people are having a hard time with that. And a lot of times when the law of attraction negativity is discussed with people who don't like the law of attraction, they turn to, you're blaming the victim. I hear that a lot. And I go, blame is irrelevant. But in our society, it's not. Blame is a very important thing.
Yeah, that's true. By the way, I want to take a moment, too, to remind listeners, if you're enjoying the podcast, if you like the topic and you're finding that you truly are, once again, getting your daily dose of happy from this particular program, just take a moment and share it with friends. Let people know that who you think would be appropriate people to remind about this or to tell about this. People who are perhaps into the law of attraction or self-improvement. Just share with them that you're listening to the program and that they ought to check it out, because that's how we're building up our listenership. That's how we have been building our listenership. That and the fact that when people subscribe to the podcast, their listenership of the podcast by themselves increases dramatically. Just last month, the average listener listened to 22 podcasts. So we know people are getting a lot out of this. So just take a moment and share that, because your friends are going to really appreciate that. Now, in the context of what you were talking about there, Joel, I just made a connection, and I wanted to tell you about it. Yesterday, I was talking with my wife about how we tend to get, there's so many people who tend to get into a place where they constantly set themselves up for failure. And it's usually, like you were talking about earlier, it's usually related to the fact that they're looking outside themselves for satisfaction or happiness or whatever it might be. And the failure rate is 100%. And yet we don't notice it. We don't notice it. We can produce the same failure over and over and over and over again and not notice the pattern, which is just still mind-boggling to me. But what the connection was that I made, you talked about codependence. And you talked about how codependence is all about being wrapped up in the emotions of somebody else, so that really your happiness or potential for happiness is completely dependent upon what somebody else is thinking or feeling or expressing. And it occurred to me, wow, that describes politics. All of politics is trying to get somebody else or a bunch of somebody else's to team up with you on your side to feel the way you want them to feel so that you'll feel better. I mean,
right.
am I wrong there?
No, well, it's one of the politics, and we almost every week it seems you and I mentioned the news.
We stay away from it. We still talk about it. Can you figure that one out?
Yeah. That's the law of attraction. For something I stay away from, I talk about it a lot, don't I? But I truly don't watch it. That's the key. But I need to explain why I don't, and I think a lot of times when politicians give their spin on things, it is, no matter how illogical the spin may seem, it is in hopes of getting other people to feel that way. When we were building a case to bomb a country years ago, we needed to tell everybody about all the evil this country was doing, and then we had a bunch of information to explain why we're about to go bomb these people and why we're about to do all this, and then everybody starts getting on board with it. It's like, yes, we need to go blow them up. And I'm just trying to make a point. And then,
right.
And then we go blow them up, do some good blowing up, really good stuff, great theatrics on TV.
Oh, yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. And then about 3 years later and about $2 trillion later, things aren't a lot better. And the blowing up sort of lost its exciting nature. And you start realizing, wow, if people are coming back with no legs, people are, wow, this is not near as exciting. And now why are we blowing them up again? Because they may have, and so you see that, and then you have another group of people explaining why blowing them up was a horrible idea. And even though they voted for blowing them up, they really didn't mean to vote for blowing them up, because they should have voted against blowing them up because it was wrong.
Yeah.
And that's politics. And again, I want to keep it, where we're at, but you can see what we do internally, of whether it's politics or and that's where that blame situation we talk about. I want to spend a lot of energy explaining why you're wrong and where you messed up. And then once I get my case out there and you sort of side with me, then I'm right. I feel better. The reality is we are where we are. I've mentioned this lady that I've worked with before, and again, I give no specifics, and I would never want to risk anyone's confidentiality. But I've worked with a lady who had seen a psychiatrist for many years, and her main question for many years was, did my father molest me or not?
Mm.
And they spent a lot of years doing that, and by no means everybody knows what a horrible, and those that know me, my working with children and advocates against child abuse and helping kids and people that have been through that stuff. But at some point, I told her, I said, well, you spent the last several years trying to figure that out. Let's pick a side and move on. And at first it was sort of insulting to her, but then she got it. Am I going to get stuck in the blame portion of this? Emotionally healthy people don't worry about the blame. Here's what's happened. Let's move forward. We live in a world where we're going to have all kind of committees investigating certain things or who's at blame. And the moment you do something, one of the things that happened years ago, and those that have read my book, The Bench, know, I had a really rough addiction, it was a blessing, but at the time it was far from a blessing.
Right.
I went through a really rough addiction time. And part of my world was, I really feel that everything I went through meant something. But when I faced a judge and I had done stuff in my addiction that I had to be held accountable for, I said, I am guilty of what I'm accused of, period. I don't need to explain why. I'm wrong. I could have gone on for hours about having addiction and how I got it. This is what I did. I needed to move on. In fact, the public defender that was representing me at the time went, no, don't say that. And I go, yeah, I'm guilty. Don't forget it. I don't care. I do care because it's time to stand up. I don't need to worry about blame anymore. I'm wrong. Let me own what I've owned, and whatever's going to happen, I need to move on. So personal responsibility is emotional happiness. When you understand, at least, and again, I'll give you my definitions of these things. When you start with being emotionally healthy, you start with being personally responsible for you, your feelings, your life, and your situation. Where you sit today, Walt, where I sit today, is a product of my decisions over my lifetime.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely true.
People do not like to hear that.
No, they don't. But the fact is, exactly what you said. We are personally responsible. And it's actually been a topic of a number of the shows that we've done over the last week or so. The idea that no matter what emotion you're experiencing, whether it be positive, negative, somewhere in the middle, doesn't matter what it is, every one of them we tend to associate with something that happened outside of ourselves, and yet in every case, 100% of the time, it actually has to do with our own response to what happened outside. So really, it's 100% within our control. It's not dependent on what's going on outside of ourselves. And this is a confusing concept. Let's be perfectly honest. In our society, we grow up believing that we cannot possibly control our own emotions because they are under the control of the external events that control us.
Right, and one of the things that it is the most freeing understanding that for the law of attraction. But at the same time, it's scary because it removes excuses.
Yes.
One of the things that, and I do not ever want to talk to anybody or tell anybody how to live their life. What we're doing is talking about happiness and how to find that happiness. To me, happiness is understanding that I am responsible for where I am today. There's been a lot of things that have happened out of my control. There's been some horrible things in my life that have happened out of my control. But what has I done, I'm responsible for my interpretation and my response to that. And that's where most people, but Joel, you don't understand what's happened. And again, I've been through stuff in my life that I have by no means am I happy about, but at the same time, I have no option, but I have to interpret it. An example, I don't even like to use this example much, but I think it's important at this point to say when my son TJ lost his life in a car accident. That was a horrible event. Just there's no words to describe that. I will never make that a good thing. I insist on that. However, my response to that is still in my control. I can choose to focus on the void created by his death or the joy he brought to my life. Both things happen. Which one gets my focus? And I'm in charge of that. I'm in charge of my grieving process. No one else is. I don't need to be dictated to how to grieve. I had many people explain to me I wasn't grieving properly.
Really? My goodness.
Yeah, I really did. I had a lot of that. But at the same time, nobody loved their kid more than I love TJ. It doesn't mean I didn't love him. It means I have to accept where we're at. I am personally responsible for me and my emotions. While that may sound harsh, at the same time, it's freeing because I'm not reliant on some outside source for my happiness or in my case, my abundance or anything else. Everything comes from where I start to feel. When I feel the abundance that I have in my life and I started to live in an abundant mindset, so I think, I think it's really important. We have that mindset of personal responsibility. That's where emotional healthiness starts for me. Emotional mindset starts with personal responsibility and stop the blame game for, one of the young men I work with, he had, several years ago, he had lost his lower left leg due to some cancer.
Oof.
And what a horrible thing to have to go through. At a time, 16-year-old boy, very athletic, losing his lower leg to that. And he went through the normal stuff. And then when I started working with him, we started talking about perspective. And by the time he changed his perspective, and he did the work, I helped lead him to the information. His mom kept saying, well, honey, you can't do this. And he said, Mom, please stop telling me what my limitations are. I have decided I don't have any. I get these really cool Blade Runner kind of feet now, or foot now. I'm actually going to be, he competes in Special Olympics or Paralympics, whatever that term is now. And he's very athletic. He's now a personal trainer and a motivational speaker at 24.
Wow.
And it has a great impact. He refuses to hear about his disability. You're not allowed to use that word in discussing with. He calls it my transformation. When I transformed to this person is when I lost my lower leg. And he will say, would I rather go back and have a perfectly healthy leg? He said, maybe, but the life I have today was because I didn't. So I can either focus on the blame of how we got there, or here I am today.
It reminds me of something absolutely, yeah, and a fantastic story too. But it also reminds me, you mentioned grief, and I kind of stumbled on something about grief with my wife, because my wife's stepmother, whom she had gotten very close to over the years, died, I guess it was about a year and a half ago. And after her death, my wife was having trouble at some points, not all the time. It wasn't like she was deep in grief, but she was having trouble with it. And there was one day in particular, it was just kind of overwhelming her. And so I was sitting with her and so forth. And then kind of out of the blue, I didn't really know where it came from. It's like, all the tumblers fall in place and all of a sudden an answer comes to you. It was that kind of a situation. And so I just, on the spur of the moment right there, just stopped what I was doing. I mean, I was basically just sitting there listening to her, but I just kind of stopped that, got up, walked over to where she was, knelt down on the floor in front of where she was, and I can't remember if I took her by the hand or something like that, basically so I could just be close to her and right in her face, so to speak, and said to her, I don't think I ever asked you, but what was it that you loved the most about Ruth? Ruth was her stepmother. And you could just see her stop, and you could see her face like going through a whole thought process and start to brighten up. And then she started telling me about all the things that she loved about Ruth. And after doing that for about 5 minutes, she said, you ought to be a psychoanalyst. And I said, I don't know the first thing. She says, well, look at all the stuff you learned from me. Well, that's true. Yeah, but I'm not, well, I guess so. I had no idea I'd hit upon something, but I did. I hit upon the idea of focus. When you're in grief, you're focusing on the loss. You're focusing on they're no longer there. And all I did was, without realizing that I was doing the right thing, I pointed her to, well, what did you love about the person? What feels good about the person? Because that never goes away. And the moment that she started focusing on that, the grief just kind of dissipated. Like within minutes, Joel, I was surprised how fast that grief dissipated.
Yeah, and that is the internal responsibility that we have to self-reliance. The more we can focus, I have the ability to view everything through the lens that I choose to view it through. I can, when people say, oh, so you're saying, I've actually had somebody who was sort of frustrated about this question say, oh, so you don't even care about your son dying? I mean, I'm like,
oh, dear.
Okay, well, clearly you didn't hear a word I said.
Yeah.
There's no greater loss that I've ever experienced in my life. There is no, I don't even attempt to describe the emotionality attached to it. It's not even a word or anything that hurts. There is no pain I've ever had before that. However, I have the choice to live in that ungodly depth of pain for the rest of my life, or I can look at just what an incredible person my son is and the joy he brought to my life. And I'm not telling anybody else how to believe. I really believe our energy will be reunited at some point, whatever that means to you.
Sure.
And I believe that sincerely. So while I wish he were here to share in all of this and the discoveries I'm living now and the abundance I have now, I have no doubt he's living it with me, but just on a level of his existence that I can't understand yet. And he already knows. So that's where you get to, we are within that. So emotional health is exactly what you're talking about here. Emotional health is, you taking what's happened. When you lose a job, people get depressed. But then people take action.
Yes. And without taking that action, you don't get anywhere.
Yeah, that's the point. So, without that action, you don't have, you're not in control when you don't take the action. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. I've had people answer me. I've gotten, through my Facebook post or people that have added things. I'm trying to think of examples, but they've responded to a Facebook post that I've had. Well, you don't know my situation, so you can't say that. And so first of all, I wasn't talking about your situation because you're right, I don't know it. But I assure you, what I'm talking about could apply if you choose to apply it, or it doesn't apply because you decided it doesn't. But you are in charge of your emotions. I've lost my job that I loved with all my heart. Yes, you did. So we can focus on losing your job and all the financial devastation that's around the corner and how horrible that will feel. Or you can look at the new opportunity in an incredible economy where the lowest unemployment rate of all times out there. There's tons of opportunity. Amazon the other day I was talking to this guy that I didn't even know they did this, which I love Amazon. I love the way they do business. They deliver things in ways I don't even understand sometimes how they get it here so fast. This guy he is an independent contractor for Amazon, and he goes there and basically picks up packages and delivers them. He brought a package to me, something within 37 minutes of me hitting send.
Whoa.
On a order. And I'm like, how did that happen? He said, well, I was there. They said, oh, we got this. It wasn't immediate shipment, but they had the order ready, and their software told him that he's going to be driving by my house. He delivered a package. First of all, that makes me love Amazon more.
Right.
He's making really good money. He's his own boss. He loves what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
The entrepreneurial opportunities out there are amazing. But when people are stuck on the loss of their job or the loss of their industry, they're like, oh, gosh, I've lost all this, versus, wow, what opportunities are out there. Those are the beautiful things that the law of attraction brings. Personal responsibility allows for great growth and wealth when you understand it, or you could focus on the deficit of everything, the loss of everything, and you'll get more of that emotion that's attached to that. So internal happiness or true emotional happiness or wellness takes place totally inside. I love our topic. Ask that question. Are you emotionally happy? The answer is super simple and super complicated at the same time. You are if you believe you are, or if you believe that you have a deficit or you have that. One of the things that religion I had a hardest time dealing with for the longest time was, the reprogramming of my brain from the religious belief of well, I certainly believe there's a God of some type. What I was taught as a child doesn't seem to make a lot of sense now. So when I started breaking all that down, one of the teachers I'm working on I'm not busy enough, Walt. I'm actually working on a doctorate in metaphysics right now, so I just want to throw that out there. That's my part-time.
Joel has one of the busiest schedules of anyone you've ever heard of, so, I mean, that really is very funny that he's saying that, but.
Yeah, I just randomly threw that in. You have that extra 45 minutes every night that's not filled. And I love it, and I'm just like a sponge absorbing that. But as my professor and I were talking the other day, and I've got a great professor that I'm working with, the concepts of all of this is so incredibly easy, but yet it goes against everything that we've ever believed. So I was he said, well, Joel, it sounds like you have the perfect life. My immediate reaction was to argue with him.
Really?
And I don't know why. I said, well, no, if it's perfect. He goes, oh, my goodness, of course it's perfect. He said, and then he said something that just you can't say. He says, you're perfect. No. I wanted to argue with him and tell him, he said, you're perfect you're perfect at being you. I'm like, okay, I know you're right. But I don't know why I want to argue with you about that statement so much.
Yeah.
Because it goes to a concept that well, no. Here's all these problems that I have, or here's all this other stuff that I have. But the truth is, this has been a magically perfect trip. This journey I'm on. I love it. It's incredible. And just like I've said, it has its ups and downs, but when you see it unfold, it's unfolded perfectly. I'm perfect at being Joel. I don't want anyone else to have to live in this brain because it took me a long time to unravel it and figure it out. Right. But now that I have it, it is amazing. And so we have a hard time accepting that. But it's absolutely true. We are perfect at being us. And that a lot of times religion starts saying, no, you're not perfect. We're all sinners. We're all this. We're all that. And, and I don't want to debate with anybody about their religion. Everybody's got to get to where they got to get to. But we are us, and we can be totally in charge of our own emotions, or we can be dependent on our emotions. But the emotionally healthy person realizes they're in charge of it all. And then when we were talking in the beginning about one of the posts that sort of spurred this topic today about I want to put out and say, okay, I'm going to put a script to the universe, what I'm trying to attract. You can only attract what you are. If you're not emotionally healthy, all the king's horses and all the king's men cannot bring you an emotionally healthy person because you're not vibrating on an emotionally healthy level.
Exactly right. By the way, this also reminds me of a series of posts that you did on your Facebook account. And of course, we're connected as friends there, so I see those. And I can't remember exactly how long you did it. I want to say it was maybe a week. But you did this whole series, and I think it was actually associated with working out because you're big on working out at the gym. But it was a whole series of posts that all surrounded the concept, you have no excuses. And
right.
Like every single day, your excuses are not valid. You put out something like that. And then I remember one day you put one up, and this is the one I really loved. You said, this ruling just in from the Supreme Court, your excuses still aren't valid. I just love that one. I thought that was great.
Well, first of all, I want to appreciate you. I really appreciate you making it sound like I'm capable of putting a series of anything together. That really makes me seem organized because the fact they happen to get lined up, that's awesome. But it was never planned. So you know how my brain works. That's not even a thing. So I really like the fact you saw it from some organized standpoint in my life. But beyond that, seriously, all kidding aside, the idea that excuses or blame or all this other stuff, it is what permeates our world. It's politics. It's, the concept of, well, we have this situation or this person's at fault here. Happiness and blame don't go together. Happiness and acceptance go together. Does that mean that you should be able to go commit crimes and get away? Of course not. Personal responsibility is dealing with it. It's when you go, it's you deal with it, you admit it, you move on. There's never been a human being that hasn't faltered or made a mistake in life. You can focus on the mistakes and become the mistakes, or you can use the mistakes to move forward. But at the end of the day, there's no excuses. And it's like the young man that lost his lower left leg. Well, he lost his lower left leg. I can wallow in the misery of that or say, I got this cool Blade Runner leg now. Let's go. And one of the things he can do with his leg, by the way, totally random ADD moment, is you want to see the board he could chop in half with that leg.
Really?
Wow. Oh my goodness, it's like an axe. I'm like, we get to get like a pick or something on it. You could, It was incredible martial artist on top of all that. He learned all that with half a leg. I was at one of my Facebook posts that you may have seen. It was a video of Justin taking his Taekwondo training the other day.
Yeah, I saw that.
His belt.
Right.
Well, one of the videos, I pan over to this other young man. And he's not my son. I've never seen him before this day, but he was getting his yellow belt, his first belt. And this little guy was about 6 or 7 years old, had a huge smile on his face, and had only one arm. But he did not realize he only had one arm or didn't care that he had one arm because he just earned his yellow belt. He broke a board. It's amazing to see. And I don't know his parents. I don't even know who they are. I don't know anything about him other than I admire his parents. They put him in, instead of worrying about what he can't do, they put him in a position to succeed.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened this is 20 years ago maybe. It was before my recovery. I was running a group home in Florida, and one of the things we did, we provided, we were given referrals from social workers of kids that were living in their environment that had disabilities. And I will never forget one of the great lessons I learned from this lady. We got a referral from this young man who's African American, in an African American family. She was a single mom. She had 4 kids. And this young man was born with no legs. They didn't lose him. He was born with no legs. And we were given a referral to go offer him the opportunity to live in our program, which did training. And I was thinking we were offering her something great. So we knocked on her door and, the normal chaotic household. And one of the things that I immediately noticed, it turned me off at first, the young man with no legs, he had found one of sort of like a broom, those big dust mop things. Mm-hmm. He was sitting on a dust mop, mopping the floor by scooting along. And I was like, oh my goodness, why is she doing that to him? And again, my perspective was from poor child.
Right.
So I explained to her what we did. She said, I don't understand. Why are you here though? I said, well, your son, he has some disabilities and, he could probably be served in an environment that he could adapt to. I was trying to explain everything and I kept being distracted by all the stuff he was doing. And she said, boys, you got to take your brother down. You guys go down to the court, shoot some basketball. I got to finish up here at the house. The other brother didn't think anything about it. He grabbed his brother with no legs, threw by an arm, threw him on his back, grabbed the basketball, and they walked down to the court. You can see the court from her house. The kid with no legs is sitting there shooting baskets, and I'm like, we're wrong. She's not wrong. I don't. We can't do anything she's not already doing. And finally, she said, I don't understand about the 4th time. I still don't know why you're here. She said, what do you think is wrong with my son? I said, well, I was given some wrong information. I apologize. We got to go. And the guy I was with going, why are we leaving? I go, because she doesn't accept and doesn't believe that there's anything wrong with their kid, and there's not, because he doesn't believe it either. Just because he has no legs, I'm assigning a whole bunch of my emotions attached to not having legs versus what they've done. She was an incredible mom who accepted no excuses. No legs? Sorry, son. Still clean the floor. Everybody does work here. She was making an emotionally resilient, healthy child. And at first, to me, it looked sort of abusive till I understood nobody gets a break here. Don't whine about no legs. We all got problems. Let's clean the house.
Mm-hmm.
I love that attitude. Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand that. Emotional health, you develop emotional resilience. You don't accept excuses in life. Whoever our audience is listening to, whatever they're going through right now, Walt, I don't remotely pretend to claim I understand what everybody goes through. None of us can. We're all dealing with something. But right now we have people listening, and they are dealing with, and when hopefully what they gather from this uplifting conversation is we are in charge of our health and happiness internally, no one else. And once you flip that switch, there's no limitations. If you are a convicted felon, no matter what you have faced, where you have health issues, you're here for a reason. Let's live it. Let's fulfill that, whatever your destiny is, or however you want to choose to look at life. But sitting around and wallowing in whatever your perceived lack is not why you're here.
Yes.
Very important to realize. And it's very exciting to have the removal in my mind of these limitations of expectations.
Yes.
And that's what this emotional health is about. Stop with expectations of others. Put your own expectations in. If I want to compare my life, okay, here's my comparison. I really want to be Michael Jordan. I really do. I want to see him jump. I want to jump like Michael Jordan. I want to, or I guess let's make it more modern. Let me be LeBron James. If I'm going to compare my basketball skills, I'm going to live in great lack. What LeBron James would do to me on a basketball court, Walt, it's not even pretty. It's not even funny. It's not even, we don't vibrate on the same level of basketball at all.
Yep.
So comparing my world to LeBron James in basketball, no. But comparing LeBron James of his understanding and the stuff that I've been through and dealing with what I've been through and the way I live my life, LeBron James holds nothing to me. This isn't about a comparison, but I'm just trying to say you got to find your avenue and where your focus is. I can spend all the energy in the world looking on why I lack when I compare to other people. Healthy internal emotions don't compare to other people. Healthy internal emotions are yours and yours alone to control. It's not a comparison to other folks. It's you. And that's where happiness comes in. I don't live in a lack, because I used to look at what everyone else has. I hear, Justin made the comment the other day, I think I've mentioned before. He said, I want to live in a mansion. I'm like, okay, that's cool. You'll get you a mansion. No, I want one now. So will you go buy? I said, buddy, we have a 2,500 square foot home for two people. There's no need for more than that. If I wanted, we would have whatever we want. There's no limitations on what we can have. But we have, don't start viewing a lack versus we have an incredible home, an incredible community. We have all the stuff we want. I want you to look at what we live in. Don't start living and wanting what other people have. He said, well, my friend, Jacob, they have this really big house. I said, Jacob had 6 brothers and sisters. They need a really big house. It's just me and you. There's zero reason to covet. I'm happy that Jacob's parents are in a position to provide that beautiful home for them and their large family. I don't want to deal with it. It's just more mess to clean up.
Yeah, right.
I look at it as, so that's the point. Well, internal stuff, internal emotional regulation, emotional health is at your disposal. We're told it's other than that. We're told that it's different than that. And the law of attraction explains this in detail that it's not.
You've been touching on something, too, that I really want to bring into focus a little bit more. I mean, we can't spend a lot of time on it because there's only about 5 minutes left. But you've been touching upon the fact that as emotionally healthy people, we are not responsible for what happens in other people's lives. We are only responsible for our reactions to what happens in our lives. And that's certainly an important point. But there's also a corollary that goes along with it. And this is what you were touching on. The corollary is no matter how emotionally healthy we are, and especially if we're emotionally unhealthy, we are in absolutely no position to understand what's going on in another person's life without knowing what's going on from their perspective in the other person's life. Like, if for instance, the day you've told this story before, the day that you got put into jail and the door was locked was one of the best days of your life because now you could finally relax and all that terrible stuff was in your past, and now you could improve going forward. That probably would have been the last thought that entered my mind if I had seen you being locked in that cell.
Exactly, and I was shocked at I explained it out. I think I talked about it in my book, or I've talked about it in blogs or on the show. I was shocked at that response. I wasn't expecting it either. I had feared that event or that day for the longest time because I was in the middle of a very destructive addiction, and it was almost inevitable that it was going to happen. But when I feared it and was shocked by, okay, it's done. Finally, and I didn't know if I was going to be there a day or 5 years, but I knew whatever that time period I was going to be there, I finally could be done. It was being locked in there was the most freeing experience of my life. Not because I was I was actually more free because I let go of the jail of my own creation. That was the beginning of all of the freedom. Most people listening have created a jail, not physical, but a mental jail. And that jail limits you by these preconceived ideas of problems or limitations or lack. And the emotional help that is necessary to free you from that doesn't exist on the outside, and it doesn't come from a pharmaceutical company. It comes internally.
And by the way, can you imagine how much I could have screwed things up if I had gone at that situation, if I had seen you there, I'd seen you locked up, felt that was just a horrible thing, and gone at it with you as if this is a really horrible thing, even though I was doing that from a point of view of I want to help Joel. That would probably have been the most counterproductive thing I could have done. And like in your story with the kid who had lost both of his legs, probably the most counterproductive thing you could have done would be to criticize the mother for having the kid push a mop around on a floor with no legs. You didn't understand what was actually going on.
By the way.
Yeah. And yet once you found out what was actually going on in the kid's head and what was going on in the mom's head and how they were perceiving it, all of a sudden it took on an entirely different pitch, an entirely different feeling. So probably the most important thing to pick up and take away from this conversation about being emotionally healthy is don't try to prejudge what's going on in another person's mind. We almost never know, and we usually get it wrong until they tell us.
You do not allow yourself, and in my opinion, this is the ultimate emotional health, not trying to fix anything out of your direct control. Emotional health is sticking in your lane of things that are in your control.
Yes.
My emotions are in my control. My response to other people is in my control. I can't control other people. If the moment I try to control other people or make people see things my way, I live in a moment of unhappiness. If you ask me my opinion, I can give it to you, but I'm not going to sit there and argue with you. I know people that want to debate. We talked about politics earlier. If people ask me my opinion and then I tell them, then they want to argue with me, and I stop them and go, no. You asked me my opinion. Well, here's what I think. I go, I didn't ask you your opinion.
That's right. That piece was missing somehow. I don't know.
Yeah. No, you literally asked me my opinion. I gave it to you. I know we're running out of time, Walt, but I want to just remind everyone that we want you to subscribe to our podcast. We want you to be involved. We want you to call in. 2018 is the law of attraction. The LOA today, that's our year. This is our year.
Absolutely it is. And I'm so glad you're doing the journey with me, Joel, because it just makes it that much sweeter. So thanks for continuing to do it.
Thank you, buddy. I love it.
All right. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.